It was only a matter of time until we saw a story like this. A California man moved his family to Austin in the Great California Exodus and then hated it and moved back to California. And I guess it's kind of a good thing. There's some pros and there are some cons here. I mean, it's kind of good when people are moving around and, talking to each other, unifying in a sense, right? If you're from a blue city and you move to a red area, you might learn something. And if people are getting away from these big cities and getting out to the middle of nowhere or rural areas, they might actually learn some responsibility. Well, in this case, the dude said it was awful and he left. And then he wrote about how awful it was. And now people are ragging on him. You know what, man? I know this is kind of a liberal is shocked to discover kind of video. And I do lean left politically, but I think there's more to an individual's personality than just are they a liberal or a conservative, because there's also how self-reliant are they, how independent are they, and maybe there's a correlation between liberals and being less self-reliant and conservatives being more self-reliant, or I guess a more positive way to put it is liberals are more collectivist and rely on each other, and conservatives more independent. So for me, I'm fairly independent, but I actually think there's good reason, to lean left on certain policy issues. My perspective on it is this. If you live in California and you move to Austin, when in Rome. So I moved out to the middle of nowhere, and I know a bunch of people out here, super pro-gun, super pro-Trump, by the way, even with Trump out of office. And they're upset, mildly, like all these liberals are moving in and they're going to start voting for this ridiculous liberal policy to make things the way they are, where they left. So you live in a place like, California. It's run to the ground by the single party rule of the Democrats. You move to Texas and then you're like, this is terrible. So they start voting for things to make it as bad as it was back where they came from. Surprise, surprise. Well, this guy writes this op-ed. I moved my family from California to Austin, Texas, and regretted it. Here are 10 key points every person should consider before relocating. Let me slow down and first say, here are 10 key points every California progressive or liberal should consider before relocating, because there's already been a decent amount of people who have left kind of happy with their move. We have this story from CNBC why some tech companies and billionaires are leaving California. Now, far be it from me to praise the billionaires. I mean, Elon Musk is cool, I guess. Joe Rogan's pretty rich. He left as well, but they're pretty happy with their decision. They don't like the overbearing taxes and the single party rule of California. And that's a reality I dealt with. Okay, I lived in Los Angeles and I worked for a homeless shelter. And I was always wondering why it was that we were fighting every day to help the homeless. And it just wasn't getting done. But it's so crazy. The Democrats control everything. Certainly they're the party of the people. They can do it, right? Nope. No, it didn't matter. With one party, the people just kept getting reelected and nothing gets done. There's no political competition. There's got to be a threat in some capacity. I don't mean physical. I mean like to the career, to the politics, to the policies, to the ideology. If you've got a conservative saying, look at this Democrat who can't get it done, I'm going to do better, then people need to be like, let's try, the competition. They don't do that anymore. Now it's all Democrat. Just Democrats always win. Why? Well, it's the fault of the people, to be completely honest. I don't necessarily blame them entirely for being manipulated and duped. But when they walk in and just keep voting Democrat, don't be surprised when it's run to the ground. So there's some pros and there are cons here, right? The pro is that this dude who was going to move to Texas and bring his bad policies with him didn't like it and left instead of sticking around and then making it worse. Now, maybe you could argue that he would have made it better. Sure, if you're a leftist or a progressive, but I'm sure the conservatives are happy that he didn't stick around. The problem here now is that people who do leave California and go to Texas who are conservative and like Texas will stay, and the liberals will stay in California. And then the ideological divide is going to keep getting crazier and crazier until eventually we are not unified in any capacity. Now, I mean, look, right now this country is hyperpolarized, but there's still some things we all kind of agree on. You'll see a movie come out and people on left and right will agree with it. But we're getting to the point where even that won't be a thing because movies are now getting super woke and going broke, and video games as well. And you're going to find people in Texas all liking certain movies and games that people in California don't like. And then there's no unifying cultural bonds. Well, here's the main story from the Daily Mail. They say, douche father of 7 sales exec who moved his family from California to Texas, then back again, is blasted for complaining about Austin's rude locals, bland culture, oppressive heat, and Yelp's bad food choices in scathing op-ed. Okay. If the dude was being a dick, by all means, be like, yo, bro, you're being a dick. Look, if he wants to write an op-ed and say he doesn't like it, I respect it. By all means, you're allowed to have your opinion. I don't see a reason to, a lot of people want to be nasty all the time. I don't like it. If this dude moved to Austin, I say, let me know how it goes for you, buddy. And when he leaves, I say, sorry, it didn't work out for you, buddy. It's that simple. You don't got to be mean to people. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems we have is that on the internet, everybody just, they substitute a personality for just being nasty people. Like, dude, they're trying to be funny and snarky and insulting and taking advantage of the other to rally one side, whatever side they think they're on. So people on the right want to rag on this guy for ragging on Austin. Look, if the guy's being a dick, I'll be like, yo, bro, tone it down a little bit. Come on. If you didn't like the place, I hear you. And he put up an op-ed. That's fine. If you don't agree with him, then politely disagree. Now, we rag on these lefties and these liberals quite a bit over at Timcast and Timcast IRL, notably the guy who fired an AR-15 and claimed to have gotten a temporary form of PTSD. Like, dude, chill out. I love telling you the story, so you may have already heard it, but I have to say it. This journalist for, I think it was the Daily, the Daily News, fired an AR-15, probably a 5.56, and said he got a temporary form of PTSD where he was anxious and irrational and irritable all day or whatever because of like the shock and the power of the gun as it ripped through him. And the funny thing about it is I'm not a big gun person, right? And you guys know I'm not. I just find it funny because like the dude's clearly never gone like small game hunting, because a shotgun you would use for like small game, not weapons of war, how they like to describe it, has more recoil and impact and hurts your shoulder more than an AR-15 does. So look, there are times where we rag on these people, okay? But sometimes it's due to their own ignorance. If a dude wants to write an op-ed about guns and he's never even fired one before and then he panics and it's like, dude, turkey hunting is not war, and there's more recoil. All right, people wear shoulder pads for some of these things. So anyway, I digress. This guy who wants to give his opinion, fine. Let's read a little bit. They say Brett Adler, a director of semiconductor business development at Japanese firm Hamamatsu, has been called entitled and a douche for writing in Business Insider that his relocation from California to Texas in 2015 was an expensive mistake. When he learned that the state with lower income taxes was a conservative dystopia, and he felt cramped even though his house was twice the size. He listed a litany of problems explaining why he decided to return west to the Bay Area, including bad driving, lame car washes, the cost of living, the monoculture that doesn't seem to be aware of its own blandness, and the fact that he took his kids out of school because it was a micromanaged military academy. Jeez, dude. You moved to Texas of all places. You ever watch Family Guy? They go to Texas and then Brian buys a bottle of whiskey and he's like, here's your whiskey and your free gun. And Brian's like, free gun? Yep, state law. Buy alcohol, get a gun. That's the joke. It's a stereotype. People in Texas like guns. They're conservative. Not entirely. There's a bit of a back and forth going on right now. But what did this guy think was going to happen? Okay, with all due respect, man. Now, I'm really interested in his conservative dystopia position, lifestyle, saying, okay, so here's his complaints. The weather. Bro, it's Texas. Yeah, the weather. He talks about how his house was big, but it was too expensive to heat and cool. Yes, it's Texas. The Bay Area is always, 68 degrees? It's amazing. What did you think, man? These people, when they grow up living in the pristine paradise, they just don't understand hardship. Heaven forbid this dude had to live in the 1800s where there was no air conditioning at all, and you were always just grimy and sweaty. Your clothes are always dirty. No public land, he says. In the West Coast, we take public land for granted. Soaring Sierra Nevadas, sandy beaches, public space canyons. Yeah, we get it. In Texas, it's privately owned. He says there was nowhere to go. Aside from the fact that everything is private, where are you going to go anyway? There are no snowy mountains, no raging rivers, and no soaring arches. Oh, come on, man. If you don't like Texas, you don't got to mock the fact that its landscape is not preferable to your opinion, like to what you like. Now, this is interesting. Dishonesty. He says, think about integrity much? I didn't. I've worked with hundreds of companies and thousands of people in California. Sure, there are bad apples, but by and large, integrity is a default way to treat people here. It's not even something we talk about. Not so in Austin. Sir, Austin is a blue area, mind you. He says, first, it was the people we bought the home from. They lied about the cause of a leak, failed to disclose well water quality issues that made us sick, lied about how much stuff cost to repair, etc., but it didn't stop there. Welcome to buying a house, my friend. He says, we hired a guy with a 5-star rating on Yelp to pull up flooded carpet who completely and very obviously busted our closet doors while we're moving them and never said a word about the damage. Or whose carpet cleaner made a foot-long burn mark upstairs and left without a word. Or the mover, also 5 stars on Yelp, who we hired, who offered to help sell our leather sectional. And okay, I don't care about this. We never heard back from him. Bro, you hired bad people. Calm down. Then he complains about Yelp. Dude, seriously? Rudeness. I'll take most of the heat from this one, but Austinites are rude. Austin is super blue. So, okay. Maybe that's on me. The dude's complaining about Austin. Okay, maybe we can complain about Austin, I guess. I've been there several times and whatever. You want to move to Texas's, blue city and have a bad job of it? I actually think this is more of a story about a Democrat, lefty kind of guy, liberal, moving to a liberal city and realizing just how awful liberals are. Maybe that's the real case. Look, he talks about it's a conservative, not quite a conservative utopia. So let's read what he says. If you ask people from other parts of Texas, they'll say that Austin is not representative, despite that most people moving to Austin are from Texas, of all of Texas. That is probably true. But here are a number of messed up things about Travis County. A lot of the newer developments are built on converted ranch land, which may be distant from other developments. Despite the fact that Texas leads the nation in natural gas production, they don't mandate that modern utilities be run through these developments. In one affluent neighborhood, Belterra, the residents are suing the developer for signing a 30-year auto-renewing contract for captured propane that leaves residents with a $600 per month heating bills in the winter. Is this a sick joke? Greed run amok. Dude, you moved there. If you choose to move there, come on. Look, it is entitlement. It's like, I moved to this area already knowing the rules, and now I'm upset about them. Let me point the finger at the libertarians, too. Okay, you guys, libertarians, I know you're going to get mad at me, but hear me out. I move to areas and I hear people complaining about taxes and all that stuff. I'm like, bro, you moved here. Before you moved here, you knew what the taxes were. Now, I understand. I'm not saying every libertarian in every capacity. Some of them just don't like taxes in general and will always complain about them. But just don't come to me and complain about the taxes in a neighborhood you just moved into when you chose to move there and you knew the costs. So if you're going to move into these houses and you know what the rules are with natural gas, are you surprised at all? You're going to sue about it? I guess fine. He says, there is also little public school choice. In California, there are charter schools, 2-day schools, public schools, cash combo charter, blah, blah, blah. You name it. In West Austin, just public schools. Don't know why. But I heard that the high school football industrial complex opposed charter schools. I mean, I got to be honest. I actually agree with him on this one. School choice. Good thing. More schools. Let's do it. And then there's water. He goes on to mention that Austin will literally have water restrictions in place while it's flooding. Can't you just take some of the water from here and never mind? And your Texan neighbors will call you out for having a green lawn. I got to stop right here. Going through this, I actually think this guy's spot on. They're making fun of the guy, but let's be real. What's he complaining about? He's complaining about a blue city with bad people who lie and have no integrity and government restrictions and regulations and a lack of choice in schools. My word, this guy sounds like a conservative. Maybe that's true. Considering the fact that he's from California, I must have only assumed. Perhaps that was the real issue. Let's read a little bit. They say the Alder family lasted just a year in Austin before moving to San Jose in September 2016, property records show, when their dreams of looking for a boost in lifestyle fell short of their expectations. Twitter users quickly pounced on Alder and said he was a hypocrite for his condescending and insulting article moaning about cedar allergies, terrible service, the lack of places to hike, and having to drive 40 minutes to a restaurant serving Southern Indian food. His return to the Bay Area bucked the trend that has seen an exodus from the Golden State to the Lone Star State by Elon Musk and tech titans, including Hewlett-Packard and the Oracle, as people are drawn to the lower cost of living. I mean, he actually looks like a fairly conservative family guy, right? Director of semiconductor business in a Japanese firm, pictured with his family, moved from California to Texas. Thousands of people have fled California, New York, and other high-cost states for lower cost of living states like Texas and Arizona, as work-from-home policies during the pandemic have allowed people to seek greener pastures. They say for every one person that has moved out of Texas, the Texas state capital, 1.53 people moved in. But even before the pandemic, 687,000 Californians relocated to Texas in the last 10 years. U.S. Census Bureau data from 2010 to 19 showed Californian transplants made up about 13% of the entire population that moved to the state since over the last decade. So I wonder if this guy's got a beautiful house. Look how amazing this house was. It's kind of shocking to me this dude was upset by what he had. To me, that's crazy. They say, they go over what we've already gone over, 40 minutes to get food. Another problem we have with Austin is the heat. Surprise, surprise, Texas is hot. You didn't know that before you moved there? Evening walks are less than refreshing when it's 11 p.m. and you're sweating. It's hard to describe how oppressive it is. Look, man, I can't imagine this guy is a conservative from the Bay Area. I just can't. It really does seem to me that it's a liberal from California's Bay Area moving to, I think I said San Diego. I think it was San Jose. Moving to Texas and then being like, this is awful. Bro, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, dude. That's just, entitlement is a big problem in this country. Let me just be completely honest. Too many people think they're owed things. I like to think about living in the middle of the woods and having nothing. Not even any clothes, just being buck naked in the middle of the woods. You want to talk about oppressive, okay? Here's my mentality. If you're buck naked in the middle of the woods, no one's oppressing you and nothing is oppressive, okay? That's nature. 0. Welcome to nature. Now, if you have a pointy stick, now you're positive. Now you're not being oppressed. You're actually oppressing. You had a stick, poke things. And people, maybe. Don't do that. Don't poke people with pointy sticks. But animals, maybe go hunt. The way I view the world is, humans lived in tribal communities in horrifying conditions, barely surviving. People got on a boat, went across the Atlantic Ocean. Think about this. Think about what this guy's saying right now, what he's going through, right? Now imagine what this guy would be like if he was on, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. I don't know if that was even the right reference, whatever. Imagine he was on one of these colonial transport ships. He's in fancy, London or whatever. And he's like, I'm going to relocate to good old the New World. And then he lands and he's like, but there's nothing here. I can't even imagine. When people came to the New World, a good portion of them died on the boat. And then they just I guess they would just chuck him off the boat. I got no idea. But people would just die on the boat, some people. A lot of people would get scurvy from a lack of vitamin C. It was an arduous journey that could take months at sea. That's nuts. It's also kind of cool if you think about it. That hurdle, the difficulty in getting to the New World made the New World so much more enticing and exciting and fun. I'm not going to gloss over the horrifying things that came with it. The war, stealing of land and all that stuff. The point is, you knew that not everybody could make that journey. And it was difficult. And when you got there, you didn't know what you'd get, but you were basically stuck there. What are you going to do about it? You need food for the return trip. So your boat's there. It's there. The first people who came had to set up outposts, start farming and producing food. And then there's winter. So you had to store all this food and figure out how to preserve it to last you months in the winter. Otherwise, you're going to die. Too many people today, man. But Texas was hot. And grow up, man. What are you looking for? Are you looking for Elysium so you can float in orbit in your magic space station with perfect weather all the time while the plebs sit down on Earth? It's ridiculous to me how ridiculously entitled everyone is. So we talk about, I don't know if you watch the Timcast IRL podcast, go to timcast.com, become members, by the way. We talk about the book Ishmael. I've never read it. I guess it's about like a psychic gorilla that tells a guy that humans are destroying the earth or whatever. And we talk about that. We talk about the Great Reset. And the Great Reset, think about this. There's bad things to the authoritarianism of the Great Reset, 100%. But think about, I was talking to Jack Murphy. We're talking about Ishmael saying people need to be levers, essentially. They need to produce more and plant trees for whose shade they know they will not sit beneath. So then in 50 years, there's shade for the children, right? That's what we need more of. And I was like, the idea is basically get people to live back in nature. And, Alex Jones described it as being more primitive and stuff. But I'm like, well, hold on a minute. Look, I get it. The authoritarianism is nuts. Telling people to give up their luxuries and their livelihoods is nuts. Mostly when the wealthy elites are consolidating power and not doing the same. Rules for thee, but not for me. But I think about it this way. You got these city folk who are becoming morbidly obese. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I mean, Americans in general, let's be serious. And they complain all day about what they deserve and what they're owed and why you should pay taxes for them and things like that. And it's like, dude, how would you love to just see some of these people living on a farm? That's it. These socialists who believe that jobs are wrong. Go live on a farm, bro. There's a meme that goes around all the time from these lefties. And it's like, wage slavery or starvation? That's not a choice. Someone posted this recently. A friend of mine posted this on Facebook. He's a lefty. And he said, wage slavery or starvation is not a choice. It's a threat. And I'm like, dude, if you don't work, you don't eat. How about this? I will gladly buy a farm and let you can live there and do your thing. I don't care what you do, okay? You live on the farm. Guess what? They won't last. Because when they realize what real work means, then they're like, nah, I don't want to do that. You know, I'm not a fan of poverty. I like the idea of a Star Trek future where replicators can just make everything, but we're not there. We can't replicate things. So here's what really bugs me. You know that minimum wage makes you one of the wealthiest people in the world, but they complain about it. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the idea of, people who, low-skilled workers getting enough to sustain themselves. And just because we're wealthy doesn't mean we're well off. You might be able to have an air conditioner or a refrigerator, and that'll keep you alive. A lot of people die in heat, but you need health care too. Okay, you need basic food and nutrients, and not everybody can get it. It's not super easy. So it's not so easy to say just because the poverty line here in this country still makes people wealthy. It does. I don't want people to be living in poverty. Let's just be clear about that. But it's remarkable to me how little appreciation there is from the left to the luxury they live in. Do they want to just live on yachts and be super wealthy? Well, bro, it comes with hard work. I know a lot of people who work minimum wage jobs and are happy. They share apartments, they go skateboarding every day, and that's all they care about. And they're making like $10 an hour wherever they live, and it's more than enough to pay their bills, and their job is remedial but mindless. I've had people tell me that they prefer mindless jobs over mindful work. What I mean by this is there are certain jobs, like this job I'm doing right now, where the entirety of my being is consumed. Every thought in my mind is consumed. All that I am, the physical work, which is not as arduous as, say, lifting rocks or anything like that, but the work that I do in setting up the channels and then the mental labor as well consumes all of my being. I had a friend tell me he did mindless like grunt labor, and he said he prefers it because he says his mind is free. And I couldn't relate to it. I couldn't. I was like, I don't know if I would like that. Like I'd feel trapped, like doing this remedial labor. And he was like, I don't get paid a lot of money, but while I'm lifting and moving things, I'm thinking about all of these things. I'm thinking about the things I enjoy. I'm thinking about movies and books. And he was like, just the stuff I want to do. And my mind is totally free while my body just does the work. And I was like, that's a really interesting point. Some people prefer things, others don't. So look, I'll just wrap this up. I don't know if this dude's a liberal or conservative or whatever. I just think it's hilarious that his approach to it was very much like shock and dismay. It wasn't all, look, if you wrote, hey, I'm a California liberal and I moved to Texas, here's my thoughts on it, and you weren't a jerk about it, I'd be like, interesting point of view. Good advice for those who might want to move there. But he was fairly condescending and like shocked, like, oh, harumph. Oh, God. The heat. Yeah, most people live like this. Most people aren't in the Bay Area with enough money to afford living there. It's ridiculous. It's another story about entitlement, my friends. But hey, I'll tell you this. It's fun to get back to cultural issues and not politics for once, isn't it? I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel from this one. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.